Hey, this is the antisocial socialite back at it again. Thanks so much for tuning in. If you are new to the channel or you have not yet subscribed, what are you waiting for? Hit the subscribe button, smash that notification bell, so every time I get to run in this mouth, in this bitch, yes sir, you are in the loop. You see the title? I hope there's a title. You know what time it is. I blame black men for the state of the black community. I hear the footsteps coming already. I'm buckling my seatbelt. I don't even know where to begin, because this is one of those kind of touchy, funny subjects, right? And I'll be honest with you, I know the title's a little bit inflammatory, but I go in quite hard on women because I don't see that many channels really speaking to women about the things that they need to do. Obviously, as you can see from the humongous view count, they're really listening and paying attention, but press on we must, right? And there's a saying, one hand washes the other. When it comes to a community, another saying is one hand cannot clap. We are opposites. We are complementary as men and women to each other, but at the same time, we are different and we need each other. So we are supposed to be working together. Now, the state of the community is kind of like, this is why you have the blame game that's so hard and well polished, because everybody has the right to blame everyone. Some of the claims that women make, they're fully entitled to make about men, because it's true, the men are doing certain things that's just not right. And the men make a very valid claim as well, because there's a lot of things that the women are doing that's not right as well. And today is time to kind of address why I blame the black man for the state of the black community. Now, is this 100%? No. I blame him and I don't blame him. Why do I not blame the black man? It's very simple. The black man is a product of his upbringing, just like all of us. We're all a product of the way we were raised, the environment we were raised in, the examples we were set, the values and that were instilled in us, how much we were invested in. Shout out to Mr. Fantastic, who stole the thought from my mind. How dare you? But how we were invested in as children, because I wanted to do a video touching on that, talking about the importance of actually making sure that you invest in your kids' ability to make money. I haven't watched his live stream at the time of this recording. Is actually going on, but I wanted to say, you have to think about their education, think about training, skills, giving them the ability to generate money, options. We're all a product of our upbringing. So if black men are failing, black women have to recognize that those black men who are failing were failed probably by black women. Okay? Because it's a woman's job to select out of her options and out of her suitors the right man to settle down with and build a family with. Not having a father in the home immediately puts your child in a disadvantaged position, because it limits your income, it limits your ability to discipline, it limits your ability to connect with your child, because if you're struggling on your own, you're either going to be an absent parent, or you're going to be like a worn out parent, or you're going to be an absent parent, and those are not adequate parenting styles for a child, especially not now. In times gone by, latchkeyism was a problem, babysitters were a problem because kids were vulnerable, they were exposed, but like, okay, taking them to family members' homes and things were happening, or you know, they were just isolated in some instances. And I've shared my own experience of being like home alone. I wasn't actually home alone for days at a time, but I didn't see my mother for days at a time because our time schedules just didn't line up. And we weren't close anyway. So it's not like I'm going to stay up and wait for her to come home. So all those things, they impact your development as a person. Okay, so you have that as an issue. But at least the whole overall time years ago was more innocent. You know, there wasn't so much filth and corruption on TV. We didn't have the internet. We didn't have smartphones. So children actually had a chance to be children. Nowadays, young people do not even get a chance to have a real childhood because they're constantly being bombarded with images and suggestions and ideologies which force them to grow up too quickly. Now, I'm not against a child being matured. I'm not against a child being equipped at a young age because they can handle it. When we look at some of these young people who are part of like Mensa and, you know, all kind of genius groups or whatever, you can see that young people have the capacity to be highly intelligent. And intelligence just means the ability to make a good decision, you know. Whatever the options and the information you have, you're able to make a decent decision. So there's book smart and there's intelligence. And, you know, a lot of young people, they have both. And it needs to be nurtured, it needs to be cultivated. But what I don't like is the over-sexualization of kids. I don't like the forcing of certain ideas onto young people, especially because in a lot of instances they know these ideologies don't work. For example, suicide rates in the LGBTQ community are considerably higher. Whether it's actual suicides or the tendencies are actually considerably higher than that of people who are not in that community. So I don't understand why you would push a narrative or push a lifestyle that comes with a whole host of other problems. Well, I do understand why. I believe it's an agenda, but I mean, let's just say, for example, let's just say for argument's sake, there's no agenda. It just doesn't make any logical sense. You're only spreading mental health. Well, I suppose if you want to make money, it does make logical sense, because if you have people who are mentally ill, you need doctors and you need to sell medicine to get them, quote unquote, well again. So it makes sense, but it don't make any sense. Okay? So I don't agree with children being forced into an adult role, but I do agree with children being pushed to maximize their potential. Those are two different things. Okay? So in times gone by, children actually had the opportunity to be children. They grew out of their childhood. They dropped off certain habits and things because they grew up. They didn't want to go outside to play. They wanted to go outside to hang out with their friends. They didn't want dolls anymore. They wanted makeup. And they gradually matured into adolescence and then into young adults. That's how it's supposed to be. Okay? But now we don't have that. So when you're leaving your child unattended, it's almost like for a blink of an eye, to be honest with you. They're on the phone constantly. They're interacting and engaging with strangers all the time. They're being exposed to different things all the time. It's so much more difficult to regulate what your kids watch because of the fact that they are constantly being influenced by the media and social media. So when you're a single parent, in particular a single mother, because most single parent households, it's usually children with the mom, you know, that child is going to be disadvantaged because the father is going to crack the whip on what the children watch. He's going to crack the whip on how much time they spend in front of a screen. He's going to force them to go outside to play. He's more likely to be an interactive player as opposed to a mother who's more likely to give a child a toy and just send the child off to go and entertain themselves. So there's so many benefits, like, you know, that we can go on into about why two-parent households come out, you know, children of two-parent households come out better than children who grow up in a single-parent home. Okay, so when these women make the wrong mate selection, then obviously the child is now going to be more likely to be a failure. It just is what it is, because the child is not there, the father's not there to ground the child, the father is not there to discipline him, the father is not there to push him, the father is not there to empower him in a way that is different from the way a mother would do that. So it is what it is. Now, that's where the women have dropped the ball. That's where the women have failed the men, in not ensuring that they have decent fathers, in not ensuring that they have picked the right man who wants to be with them, number one, is committed to them, i.e. marriage. I do believe that it's important to promote marriage. And number three, he actually wants kids. Now, I've spoken to women, you know, and in the course of heated discussions on this kind of topic, I had a lady who was very candid, and she openly said, you know, when we got married, I checked every box, but we didn't really have a discussion about whether the man wanted kids. I didn't press the issue because it's probably painful enough. So either she had a child and he wasn't happy, or she got pregnant and she had to get rid of it because he didn't want children, or maybe she didn't want children and he did, and he's like, well, we're married, give me a child. And it's like, there are certain issues that before you say I do, you should know this person and I are on the same page. There are certain things which are not important, and there are certain things which are core. They are like deal breakers. Like, if I have to even stay with you for 1 week and we are not compatible in this area, like, it's just no. It's a no from me, thank you. It has to be. And we have to know within ourselves what those deal breakers are, and really evaluate how significant they are. If there's something petty and ridiculous, like, I like a man who's 6 feet but this guy's 5'10", like, you're stupid. Because let me tell, and I say you're stupid if you're listening to this and you're like, I need my man to be 6 feet. Unless you're like damn 6 feet or 5'10" yourself, what the hell do you like? What difference does the extra 2 inches make? What do you actually get from the extra 2 inches? I mean, there are other places where 2 inches is important, and I'm telling you, the height is not one of them. So, I'm sorry. All right, I'll just keep it clean, keep it PG. But it's like, oh gosh. But yes, this is for 18s and over. This is not content for children. You know, YouTube regulations, we've got to make it clear. Is this for kids? No. Okay. But like, if you're saying like, I'm an average height woman and my man has to be 6 feet, I mean, really? That's a negotiable in most people's book, because it doesn't impact anything significantly. Even if he was like a professional basketball player, maybe if he's got the technique, maybe the extra 2 inches wouldn't make a difference, you know. But are we on the same page on the really important stuff that dictates life every day? Because children do impact life every single freaking day. So it's not like, you know, it's not like the height thing where over time we're all going to get shorter, because as you age, your bones shrink. So people, as they get older, they get shorter anyway, you know. Once you have a child, your life is permanently changed. So things like religion, where you're going to live, you know, how you're going to manage the finances, like this, you know, are you traditional in the way you believe in your roles? You know, as a woman, Do you believe in submission? Do you believe in following your husband? As a husband, do you understand your role of being a protector, a provider, and a leader? Are you willing to follow through on that? If you have children, are you going to have children? How many do you want? How will you raise them? Where will they go to school? Will they go to public school? Will you have money set aside for private education? Will you homeschool? Are you prepared to be a stay-at-home wife? Do you want to go 50-50, which I don't support? You know, these are core issues because they are life-changing issues. So you should know as a person within yourself what your core issues are, and you discuss them before you commit in marriage, because the marriage doesn't change things. Getting married actually puts more stress on your relationship if you're not careful, because now you have that added level of it's like status, or I don't know if it's prestige, but it's like there's a higher expectation upon you now that you've gone up the aisle, because people understand the significance of the title and the act of committing in marriage, in the sense like it's supposed to be a big deal. But at the same time, because we have laws that make it very easy for people to divorce, they're kind of like, it's a big deal in the moment. Once the novelty wears off, then I can just bounce if I'm not happy. Okay? It's not this sacred, solemn vow in a lot of people's eyes like it used to be, but it is for the moment when they do it. Okay? So it's like, people need to understand that if you're going to, this is why marriage is so important. And maybe I'm actually going to do a video. Sorry for the wind. You know, if it's blustering in the background. You know, it's so important. This is why I say you should commit before you have the children, because if the man is not willing to commit, then there's no point. There's no point. So we have to know what our core issues are, and then this is what the courting phase is all about. Start talking to someone, you start dating, you start to get to know who they are as a person, and to see which ones you're compatible with. You're gathering information. If you see someone who you feel like that has the potential to be a spouse, then you go and you take your time to talk about the ins and outs of a committed relationship like marriage. And then once you've done that, you go up the aisle and you say, I do, because this is a merger, this is a contract, this is not just two people having a cake and a big dress. The issue is today, a lot of people, they focus so much on the wedding day, they don't actually think about the years after the wedding day. That's why the marriages don't last. It's not the institution of marriage which is the problem, it's the mindset of the people going into marriage. They're getting married for the wrong reasons, they're not really doing their homework to figure out what they want and who they're getting into a marriage with. They have the idea that marriage fixes things. I don't know who came up with that dodgy idea, like things will just get better if we just get married. No, the pressure of being married is actually going to cause it to break down. This is one of the reasons why, now some people say it's not, conclusively a correlation, but they say this is why couples who cohabit, after sometimes cohabiting for years, Brad and Angelina, not long after they get married, they get divorced. It's because sometimes people don't really want to get married after they cohabit, but because they've been living comfortably as almost like a husband and wife, it's financially, more lucrative. It's better to be two in one house, and maybe by then you're having regular sex or you have kids together. So it's like, oh, we're almost like we're married, we might as well just go up the aisle kind of thing. It's not like I'm dying to spend the rest of my life with you, I look forward to growing old with you, you're my best friend. It's like, oh, we're already living like husband and wife, so let's just get the certificate and get it over with. And it's like, as soon as you get married and realize, oh, I'm actually stuck with you now legally, it's like, actually, I realize now I don't want to be with you. This was just convenience. And that's why so many people who cohabit really don't last. because there's nothing new about getting married now, because you've been doing the same thing as before, and you only really got married because it was convenient, not because you really wanted to. Now, if you're in a committed relationship and you're living together, I've heard people do this before, where they actually separate. Obviously, if you've got kids, that's going to be quite challenging, but it's kind of like abstinence, you know, or if you have like type 2 diabetes, for example. Type 2 diabetes is something we acquire when we consistently have too much sugar in our diet. And the body gets so used to having this high level of sugar in its bloodstream that it no longer gives that insulin response that would take sugar out of the bloodstream. And that causes all kind of problems for the body. The way you correct type 2 diabetes is simply cut your sugar, and you reset the body's baseline level of sugar in the blood to something normal and healthy, so that when your sugar level spikes, then you get the insulin response you're supposed to get. It's kind of the same thing when you're sleeping around or living in this kind of cohabitation type situation. You're kind of just coasting along on autopilot because you're so used to living a certain way. Separating will give you time to evaluate, it gives you time to breathe and think, and it also gives you something to look forward to, that actually now we've been apart a bit. This is why sometimes people who separate even get divorced, they get back together because they're like, it's not right to say I wanted to see if the grass was greener, but that separation period made you really look at what you had, and you realize, actually, I do want to be with this person. Separating, even if you're committed and you want to get married, separating and having your own separate space and life, or maybe sleeping in different bedrooms and things like that, it gives you an opportunity to have something to look forward to when you go to get married. I know some people take the piss and they're like, oh, you're born again virgin and things like that. Well, screw all of those people. People need to learn to stay together. And if that means resetting and learning from the past and doing overs, I mean, most people have to do over. Most women are definitely going to have to do over, because if it's not, you know, a bad track record, it's at least some faulty thinking in there that needs to be revised. So it is what it is. So that's where the women have like completely messed the game up. By destroying the family, they themselves have broken the men and the boys. Now, where I blame black men, right, is black women will do as much as black men allow. Now, the mind of the black man has already been shaped by his mother to think a certain way towards women, to give her certain allowances, to give her certain privileges. But that is obviously going to be to his own detriment, because he himself is going to be consumed by the same women. The same kind of women that raise him are the same women he's going to unfortunately have to marry and date and even have children with. And that's how the cycle gets repeated. One of the biggest areas in which these men have really allowed themselves to be controlled is by their private parts. I'll just say it like that. Black men who are so obsessed with sex, pumping and dumping, running through women, these guys are women in men's bodies. These guys are males who basically haven't got anything else to give a woman but sex. And they try to use that sex as a bargaining chip. They try to use that sex as a way to keep her hypnotized and distracted, so that she doesn't see that he really isn't about anything of any consequence. Okay? And it's brothers like this that muddy the water because they have such low standards. Now, this is why I get frustrated with guys in the manosphere, because you're talking about weight. Let's pick weight. Okay? In other cultures, like to say white people, there are a lot of white people who date chubby girls, right? But when it comes to the image that they put out in terms of beauty, they make sure it's the tall, slender toned, you know, fair skinned long blonde person who gets center, front and center, to the point where you'd think that the only people who exist in the white community are all slender blondes. I mean, we are not Swedish. I know, I mean, maybe even in Sweden that's not the truth, but that's how it seems to come across, because that's the image that's presented to us all the time. Now, the women who are big, they understand, I've got to find the guys who like plus size women or whatever. But I mean, you go to the affluent areas, you walk up and down the street, all you see is these gym bunnies and you know, white women running, let me just say it like that. Just white women in their spandex running up and down. Okay? So they understand the importance of looking right so that they can get the best options. But the men are the ones who had the standards to tell them, this is what I like. This is why we had fate. This is why so many white women are bleaching their hair blonde, because they believe blondes have more fun and men like women who are fun. This is why in the 90s we had a massive craze of breast implants, because white men, they loved like a boy body with like two humongous breasts on it. I don't know, I don't understand that, because it's so disproportionate. But then, you know, black people have curves and the top and the bottom are offset generally. So for for me to hear a man say I like slim waist, flat, like almost a non-existent behind, but then two humongous breasts, it's just like, that doesn't even look normal. But okay, but we had a ton of women who, you know, were breaking their own backs literally to get these implants because it increased their options. Men have to have standards if they want women to fall in line. And that doesn't mean to say that women don't have agency, or they don't have common sense, or well, that's debatable, and they don't have like a sense of understanding of what men like, but it needs to be followed through with actions, because it's the walking away and it's the refusal to, oh my gosh, anyone who's watched my videos knows I struggle to pronounce S sounds, and for some reason it comes out as a SH. So the fact that the men will not date women that are subpar. Oh my gosh, it's getting worse. I'm going to struggle with the English language because there's a lot of words with the S in it. You know, it actually will force a lot of women to come correct. It will force them to evaluate themselves and think. Like I was seeing at the bus stop today, and there was this young lady. She must have been about 18. She was a teenager. She looked like she's going to senior high if you're in America. There's college here. And I heard it, she's like, oh, you know, and I looked at her because I'm peeping over with the corner of my eye, and she's like, you know, I'm going to have salad for lunch, and, you know, I'm going to go to the gym and everything. And I was like, good. I wanted to say, good girl. I mean, you're not overweight, but you're a few fried chicken away from obesity. And it's... In other cultures, the women understand that there's a game to play, and you're playing to win. Okay, it's like black women just have this attitude like, I'll take it or I'll leave it, but they don't understand that time is running out for them. You may think that you have the options to leave it. Yeah, you do when you're young, when you're in your prime, but as you get older and your options get more limited, you don't want to have to settle because you threw away all your best options while you were in your youth. Women who are from, you know, a more patriarchal society, they understand the concept of legacy, and that influences who they decide to deal with. Another situation, I was watching Real Housewives of Atlanta. New York. You know, those who have listened to the channel, they know I have a bit of a guilty pleasure with those reality TV programs. And I couldn't believe my ears when this lady, one of the Real Housewives, turned around and said, you know, I've got this man and he's like husband material. You know, we go on dates. And then I've got, you know, I don't know what his name is, like Jack. You know, Jack is fun. And I just, it hit me like the alpha bucks. What's it? Alpha F's, beta bucks. I was like, wow. Like, if you don't understand the red pill concept, you would look at that and you think, yeah, makes sense. Like, you want to put the guy who's long term to the test to see if he's really worth being long term, but you have your little bit on the side that's the fun guy, and maybe the long term one is not going to be this as fun in bed or whatever. And I couldn't believe that she just came right out in this very blasé way and said, I have a couple of men that I'm talking to. Some are for long term and I give them a hard time and I make them take me on dates. And then I have this one who is literally just for my sexual gratification. I was like, wow. Black men have to have standards in order to hold women accountable. When a man has no standards, he's giving away his power. When a man doesn't value himself, when a man doesn't think about what he needs first, he is ultimately giving all his power to women. And this is why, I make this video saying I blame the black man. Because in cultures where men have standards and they're not so hypnotized and driven by sex, their thirst to get vagina all the time is not at the forefront of their mind. They actually think with clarity. They actually think in terms of priorities, and they're able to hold other people accountable, whether it's man or woman, because they have standards. The lack of standards in the black community, especially amongst black men, is why they're able to be so easily manipulated into foolishness. I walk down the street and I see some of these young boys. Yesterday I got on the bus and there's 3 of them, freshest trainers. They had the swag, they had the right clothes. Then they start talking some smack about, clearly they sounded like they were doing like either drug running or some drug dealing, or they were in trouble at one time. I don't even know, because they're talking in slang and I'm now too old to understand young people's vernacular. Okay. So I was like, I know that a lot of the stuff that you're doing is literally just to impress females. Like, you carry yourself with a certain swagger, you talk a certain way, and basically your point of origin and your central focus is just to get sexual access. Well, it's kind of like the video I did the other day where I'm saying, these women are not raising their daughters to be wives. They're just basically setting them up to be whores. A lot of these young boys, they don't even have a clue about the first thing about being a husband or a father. All they know is they want access to females. So I kind of shook my head, because I was like, I doubt very much you have a job. Some of these guys who like dodge the bus fare, they have the latest fashion, name brands from head to toe, because everything's got a label or a logo. And it's like, that's your priority. You're basically operating like a female, making yourself pretty so you can be attractive. You're attractive, but you're not productive. And okay, you can get away with that while you're a teenager.